Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Let's see if I can make this video work out without getting totally lost in a kind of rambling rant. But anyways, I was talking about making this video, and here it is. I'm actually remaking this video. I feel slightly more energetic, and I have coffee by my side, and it's not too late at night, so I think hopefully this will make some sense. Anyways, I wanted to just talk about alternative solutions, alternative roads, alternative paths. All of this is just suppose. All of this is just conjecture. I'm not inciting violence or saying that we should go out and start shooting up places or, whatever. Getting our shovels and our pickaxes and, going to City Hall. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just, I'm trying to kind of give alternative overviews to what we can do in the face of climate change, considering that it's very late in the game and that, what are we fighting for? We're fighting for the earth and possibly the future of human civilization and all life as we know it and everybody that we know. So that's pretty big. That might be worth fighting for. I don't know. Listen, I'm not against people that think that we're in a bad place and there's no use in trying to figure out solutions. I understand that there is that faction. I talk about this a lot. And I also talk about the fact that I feel like, what's the point? I just don't do defeatism well. I don't do, I don't do giving up very well. And I kind of feel that if you're going to present, for me, the logical step, the next step in presenting the fact that we're in a bad place is like, and then what do we do? It doesn't really work in my mind that like, here's where we are. Everything's really shitty and terrible. And so let's just, let's just hang out and enjoy ourselves. I feel like on some level, and again, this is not a judgment on somebody who feels this way. It feels like a cop-out to me, personally, on some level. If you care about somebody, if you care about things, if you care about your people and your family and your loved ones and the earth itself, like if you're going to go down fighting. If you're going to, and go down fighting for something that's worth fighting for. So yes, this is just kind of could end up being a weird little video. So interesting. So I had to add this into the mix, and I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I didn't publish the other video the other night, because I watched this video with kind of like an alternative archaeologist, Graham Hancock, who was on the Joe Rogan show, and I'm going to link this video, and it's, to me, incredibly interesting. Interesting subject matter. But he had, interesting things to say, and he was talking about the last ice age, coming out of the last ice age, the Younger Dryas, and basically, many archaeologists see that as the beginning of, our modern civilization, etc. And Graham Hancock is of the mind that there was an extremely advanced civilization before then, and that the ice age basically destroyed this advanced civilization, and then there was like a comet strike, and there was climate change. So climate change brought about the end of, climate change brought the end of the last advanced civilization, and most of it was destroyed, but there was, parts of it left. And then as the earth warmed, there were people kind of recreating new civilizations out of the bits and pieces of the old civilization. And, interesting theories, possible things to think about as our civilization goes, circles around the toilet bowl. If you're looking at this in a deep adaptation scenario, what do do you prepare yourself to just kind of hang on and hope to be the few bits and pieces of humanity that might make it through some kind of bottleneck into the future? Obviously, science tells us that things are much more dire than that. That we're not dealing with anything natural, but they were human civilization survived some cataclysms. This is yet another cataclysm. Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, I'm going to play this very interesting part of what he had to say in this video, and this coincides or coalesces with what I like to think about Aboriginal societies or indigenous societies, learning from them. Instead of us exporting our Western first world culture all over the earth and killing everything, in order to save ourselves, we need to import these older civilizations, these older societies, these older ways of life, in order to possibly survive into the future.
Exploration. And again, I think a lost civilization is the best answer, and that near the end of the Ice Age, when the Younger Dryas cataclysm unfolds, it's not an overnight thing. It's very bad 12,800 years ago. There's about 1,200 years of horror. I don't think the civilization went down in a single day and night. I think there were survivors. I think bits of it were left. I think their project was to restart civilization. And I suggest very strongly that where they tried to mount that project was amongst the hunter-gatherers who coexisted in the world with them at that time. We ourselves are an advanced civilization, at least that's what we call ourselves, and we coexist in the world with hunter-gatherers. It's not an odd idea that an advanced civilization and hunter-gatherers should coexist, and there is separation between us and the Amazonian hunter-gatherers. There are tribes in the Amazon that are uncontacted and that we don't know even exist. If a catastrophe on the level of the Younger Dryas were to occur today, I don't think that our civilization would make it through. We are the spoilt children of the earth. We are just used to having everything laid on. The supermarket shelves are groaning with food. We can get food delivered to our homes. We have roofs over our head. We have shelters. We have clothing. Everything is taken for granted. I guess you're an exception, but very few people in modern Western culture know how to survive. They don't have survival skills. They don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to gather. They don't know how to grow crops because they've handed that responsibility over to others. We live in a society that's highly segmented and specialized, and different people specialize in different things, but nobody has the vast general survival skill that a hunter-gatherer has. So in a global cataclysm, actually, at first counterintuitively, the people who would survive it would be the hunter-gatherers. And an advanced civilization would be smart, if they were survivors, to seek refuge amongst hunter-gatherers.
That's all I wanted to play of that. The man speaks the truth, right? We won't survive. Many of us will not survive a cataclysm, and we won't survive extreme climate change unless there is a global political will in place to take care of people, knowing what the cataclysm. But all signs point to that not happening because everybody's going to hold on to this paradigm, to modern industrial civilization. They're going to hold on to the very end, or hold on until it all falls apart, and then, what's left. So there are people already doing this. There are preppers. There are people that are learning the old ways, learning to live off the land, learning to grow food, and the man knows of what he speaks, and I just thought that was an interesting clip. I wanted to play that for you. Check out the entire video, though. It's mostly him talking. Joe is doing very little talking. He's just going, wow, the whole time. Anyways, I want to move on to this. I believe Craig sent this to me, and I'm not sure, and I'm sorry if I don't remember, but this is a lawyer talking about the use of of the use of violence basically to protect wilderness and people's homes and people's communities against the onslaught of industrial civilization. Now, let me just preface. I I know I've been talking about this in various ways, and talked a little bit about it last night, and people are debating me in the comment section. I like peace. I just don't think that. I don't think it's necessarily always the way to go. I think human history is filled with violence, and of course we don't want to continue being violent. I mean, that's our problem, is that we're violent and we use violence to do whatever we want to do and to get whatever we want to get, and to foist our superiority on on others and on animals and on the land. However, I don't necessarily agree that nonviolent protesting or nonviolent action is always the way to go. I feel like it's a combination of things. Again, in this, Extinction Rebellion is building on the nonviolent protesting of the civil rights era, which worked wonders within our system. Right, there wasn't a revolution. We didn't overthrow our system in order to move forward as far as granting people civil rights. However, it wasn't all peaceful protests. There were definitely armed and violent or threats of violence from other factions in the civil rights movement. Malcolm X, by any means necessary. You had Black Panthers showing up with automatic rifles on the city on the steps of the Capitol building in Sacramento. You had people that were armed to the teeth, saying, like, you're not going to come in here. You're not coming in our community because we're going to defend ourselves. And I happen to think that it was a combination of those things. Definitely the peaceful protesting, the violence that was put onto the peaceful protesters was also shown on TV and was shocking. And people were like, oh my God, are we really this monstrous? And in that way, it does take a very small amount of the population to move action. I don't think it's always the peaceful protesting that gets things done. I mean, the Vietnam War didn't end because people did die-ins or people were peacefully protesting or had concerts. Or Buddhist monks set themselves on fire. That didn't end the war. What ended the war was the Vietnamese people waging a successful guerrilla campaign against the most powerful country on this planet. They fought back. They defended themselves, and they did so in very, very effective ways. So, that was a case, and that, it was the combination of being an unpopular war and the Vietnamese and the United States government not being able to overthrow this country without, probably going to a nuclear option. They weren't winning. They were in this, long fought skirmish, that turned very ugly. It was the Vietnamese people fighting back that won that war. It was unwinnable. It was unpopular, and it was eating up resources. So we had to get out. I don't know. There also in the United States, in the history of the United States, the right to unionize, the workers' rights that were won in the last century, didn't come from peaceful protesting. They came from very, very violent confrontation. I mean, there were strikes, but a lot of those strikes were very bloody, and quite violent. And those rights were won. Those gains were won within this system by by violently protesting, by, and by bringing down, by really causing havoc, and by striking and by boycotting, and all the means, all the tactics were used. It wasn't just violence, but anyways, there's just a long tradition of people fighting back. The Irish, fighting the IRA, fighting back. It's not. I'm not a violent person, and I don't like violence, and I don't want to. I don't want to see people do violence or have violence done unto them. But this is a very violent system, and this system will protect itself by violence, and it's been shown over and over again. It was shown in the Vietnam War, when basically cops came in, and or the National Guard came in and started shooting people and kicking people in the face. Occupy Wall Street ended by what? Violence. There's a point at which you have to decide what it is that you're willing to go down for. And though I always support nonviolent, peaceful protest, I do support it. When that doesn't work, what are you going to do? So, anyways, this lawyer is talking about the legality of using arms to protect yourself. There's another point I want to make, and this was an idea that also was talked about in the 60s, which is if a law is unjust, then morally unjust, morally not right, then on some level, on a legal moral level, you have the right and the duty to break this law, or to go against this law, or to go against the law if that law is unjust. And people do this, have done this all through history, and there's precedents for this. And so this lawyer is talking about what to do in the face of climate change.
Many people in the environmental movement, I think, get lost in what they're trying to do. And they think of themselves as these very powerless beings, and they only ask, what can I do? Instead of what needs to be done. And when a lot of people ask, what can I do? They do realize, well, I can file a lawsuit. But what they also need to understand is that if in a very serious effort to arm themselves, train themselves, they could also defend their community with arms. And when the legal system has failed you, and you have used every last avenue of the legal system to protect your community, I think that people have a moral imperative and a moral right to use force to defend their communities. And so I would really ask everyone.
And that's all I'm going to play of that clip. But let's, if we're talking about how little time we have left to change things, how little time we have left to maybe possibly turn something around, and if we're going to actually get something done, if we're going to take down industrial civilization before 2025, or stop using fossil fuels before 2025, the possibility of doing that through the political system or the legal system, it's just going to take too long. So how serious do you want to be about making this change? How serious do people want to be about making this change? And as people wake up to this problem, they're going to have to wake up to the reality of how fast it's advancing and how fast we're going to have to act. And when we find out that the political system is going to continue to fail us, when you try to fight something through the courts legally, they just change the rules. And that happens over and over again, or the whistleblowers are jailed or tortured. The truth tellers are jailed or tortured. what do what do you do? How do people organize around trying to get something done? If we're serious about doing something. So again, I'm not advocating violence. I'm putting this out there for discussion, and I'm putting this out there in people's minds to just think about what it is, how it is that they might want to fight this. Because I think, building communities and building gardens and building, spaces where we can live outside of the system is great. The system is, right now, the way the system works in the United States is that if you try to do that, they will most likely try to, you're not going to be able to do that legally. At some point, they're gonna overrun you. But however, changes are advancing apace. People are waking up. So, do the legal things, do the political things, do all the things. But if you feel like it's not happening fast enough, if people start waking up to this and they feel like it's not happening fast enough, I think that we're going to start seeing people taking other kinds of actions. And I'm just kind of discussing, giving a little overview about what those actions might be. This is a very interesting video. Somebody linked this to me as well. This guy is talking about taking legal action, but as debt default in the face of climate action, or in the face of catastrophic climate change. This is an interesting video. I really like this video. I'm going to link it below. I urge you all to watch this video. I may even try to have this guy on for a interview, because I found him, what he had to say, pretty interesting. But he says one interesting point. And the point he makes is this: if we follow the Green New Deal, or if we follow trying to get to net zero by switching everything to renewables, if you try to do that by 2025, if you try to, build all the electric cars and build all the power plants and all the solar, the solar plants and the wind turbines, doing that would actually generate a CO2 increase, a net increase. We would actually increase CO2 trying to make all those renewables and put them in place in order to go net zero. So think about that when you're talking about supporting, switching over to renewables as the answer. Obviously, many people don't think that's the answer. I, for one, am not one of those people. I am one of those people. I don't think it's the answer. And he, very lucidly brings up the idea that that's not going to be the answer. That's not going to do it. So he's going to talk a little bit about a debt jubilee. I don't know how much I'm going to play of this, but I'll just give you a little bit of this.
If you attack the financial system, it will have repercussions in Britain, it'll have repercussions in America, and it will have secondary repercussions in China. It will certainly make the establishment sit up and take notice if you can mount a credible threat to the banksters. Now, as I've said, what a credible threat is to the banksters is going for the jugular, going for the debt-based system. And the obvious way to do that is, because almost everybody is a debt slave, is to have a unilateral cancellation of all debts by debtors. Now let's imagine how that might work out. Let's say that there was a token response. Let's say that the very active and committed members in XR were the only ones to actually do this action of debt cancellation. Now, what that would mean is they would probably be punished in the courts legally for default on debt. Now, there are a number of things to note here. The first one is that it's a much better use of resources to fight non-payment of debt in court than it is to fight one of these draconian anti-eco-terrorism measures that they've prepared for. Now, if members of an organization wind up in court facing charges that may result in lifetime imprisonment, the organization and the members themselves will have to use resources to fight those lawsuits. It's much easier to fight a non-repayment of debt lawsuit. So if you educate the public, particularly in America, and prepare them to fight legal counteraction in the courts by insisting on a jury and not having any of the streamlined process, you use up a lot of the government's resources and make it difficult for them to fight mass actions. One of the other things to prepare the public for is to educate juries that in America there's something called jury nullification. Now, I think it's possible to make a legal case to say that non-payments of debt in favor of climate action is defensible. And any law where somebody is prosecuted for non-repayment of debt can be struck down by a jury in America through jury nullification. So I think
So that was a very interesting idea, I thought. I don't know what you all think about that. I'm going to link the whole video below if you want to listen to it. But yeah, so non-repayment of debt as a way to tie up the legal system, and if you get people to, if you get jury nullification happening, basically the jury just, they throw out the verdict or, of whatever the judge has to say. They can do that. They can nullify the verdict or nullify the charges or whatever. And that's that. And that's that. Then you're good to go. Again, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't necessarily agree that this is going to work, but it's an interesting idea. I'd like to know more about it, or maybe some more details about it. I do think, though, that if you start doing stuff like this, they just change the rules. The powers that be are very, very crafty in the United States, and the corporations are extremely crafty at getting public sentiment against the people that they want to get public sentiment against. So it might be hard to actually, drum up or gin up that public sentiment. Who knows? I don't know. Just another idea in the fight, a possible fight for the planet against the onslaught of industrial civilization in the face of climate change. And lastly, I'm going to finish up with this. This is a whole series of resistance strategies. It's called Strategy to Save the Planet, and it's Lyra Keith talking about... A lot of this is historical overview, and it's very interesting. This is an interesting series, and there's actually not a lot of strategy. She doesn't actually go into too much strategy, but basically talking about more like guerrilla type tactics, taking out key infrastructure in order to bring down industrial civilization, or in order to inhibit or maim industrial civilization, slow it way down, possibly get its attention, get the powers that be attention, like, hey, we're going to keep doing this if you don't change things. So I'm going to play a little bit of this video, and she's talking about how women won the vote in the UK. And this is a very interesting, just little piece, little snippet.
Lean writes in her journal, was there a difference between trying for the vote and getting the vote? And she realizes what she has to do. She's got to create an organization that puts together the experience, the accumulated wisdom of the women who've been doing this for generations, with that fearless courage of the young. With her daughter saying, "We're not going to lose. We got to do this." If she could make an organization that combined those two things, they would win. And she was absolutely right, and that was what she did. The WSPU was born, and they engage in first massive civil disobedience. They completely up the stakes. They hound members of parliament and the prime minister. And they were arrested, they went to jail, and they went to prison, and they were tortured. A specific law was passed by Parliament that let them be tortured. It even used the female pronoun, so the prisoner she. It's called the Cat and Mouse Act. And when that didn't work, Christabel escalated the troops to arson. So they blew up golf courses and mailboxes, historic buildings and railway stations all across England. That was how women won the vote. You don't get to learn that in school, but that was what they did.
And that's how the women won the vote. By all kinds of actions. And some of those actions were blowing up things and setting fire to things. When the laws were changed in order to torture them, in order to strike fear in their hearts, in order to get them to go away, stop doing all this stuff because we don't want to deal with this. So it was very violent. There was a very violent confrontation for women to get the vote. So again, I'm just giving some varied views and ideas about how to go forward in this fight to change things. And also, the other tactic is to keep informing people, to keep communicating to people about this, to keep preparing yourselves, to keep getting off grid as much as you possibly can, to get yourself to stop using the tools of industrial civilization as much as possible, to grow your own food, to make your own things, to survive with less. All of these things are necessary tools in facing the future. But lastly, I just wanted to say very quickly, I think the left has a problem with being, it's the whole compassionate, nonviolent, raised consciousness. All of those things are wonderful things. The thing is that the psychopaths, that the fascist psychopaths, the people that use the tools of industrial civilization, the people that have their hands on the levers of power, have no compunction. They have no problem rolling right over you while you're being all compassionate and caring and higher consciousness and higher minded and nonviolent and all that stuff. They don't care. The only thing they care about is looking bad, and that's the only thing that a nonviolent protest or nonviolent action can do is just make them look bad and bring attention to your plight, and that does in the eyes of the public raise awareness and make you look better in the but at the same time, again, at some point, the cops or the military or whoever, or the corporate thugs are going to come in and sweep you out and knock you out. And that's just what's going to happen. So I don't always think that it's the best tactic to just be like, no, that's just pacifism. And, I don't want war. I want peace. But the people that wage war don't care about how much you want peace or how much you don't like war. They don't care. They love war. They history belongs to those who have the power. And that's just fact. So if you want history to go in your direction, you're going to have to use all the tools in the tool belt. You're going to have to all the tools at your disposal. You're going to have to think about using those tools if you really want to get something done. So just things to think about. And again, if industrial civilization goes down because of climate change or because of climate disaster or extreme weather or lack of food, people are going to be doing all kinds of things. There's lots of people in this country with lots of guns. They're going to be running around causing mayhem. So, think about what you're going to do in the face of that, in the face of, maybe gathering communities together or people together, like-minded people together to maybe get off somewhere and be safe, to build some kind of hideout or some kind of safe spot or safe zone so that you can weather the storm or survive. I hope this wasn't too raggedy of a presentation, but I've just, I just want to talk about these videos. They all brought up very interesting points for me. Looking forward to hearing your comments and discussion below this video. I probably am going to come back and make another just like regular old climate change video, because that's just what I feel like doing right now tonight. And because I'm going to be out of town, I'd probably want to put up a couple videos for the next couple days so people just have like something to watch for a little while. That's all I have for you on this video. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.